Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel where we discuss entertainment and pop culture from days past or anything that I really want to talk about because I love it so much. My name is Ainsley, and today we are going to discuss one of my favorite films, Cat People, that was released in 1942. Cat People is about especially on the surface, is about a woman who believes that when she becomes aroused, she will turn into a Black Panther, and it turns out that her fears are in fact true. And while this is the overall theme of the story, it has been noted that this story is about the repression of female sexuality, and it can also be said that this film is just about the repression of one's sexuality, regardless of the gender or sex of the individual. Now, what we're going to be discussing mainly in this video is queer coding in Cat People, and a lot of that basis comes from, especially from myself and some of the articles that I'm going to be quoting, is that DeWitt Borden, who is one of the writers for this movie, was actually a gay man, and that the character of Irena represents him, and that Irena may not mean to be a queer woman herself, but is meant to represent him and his more feminine side. So, Cat People was released in 1942, and it is a story of a woman fighting her inner turmoil and her inner longings and the feelings that she's been repressing for a very long time. And in 1942, Val Lewton was named the head of the horror department at RKO Studios, and he was given a salary of $250 per week, and he would have to follow 3 roles. Each film would have to come under a $150,000 budget. Each film would have to be made under 75 minutes, and Lewton's supervisors would supply the film titles. And now that Lewton has a new job and the roles, he finally gets the first title, and it would be the most successful and overall well-received and best remembered film of them all, Cat People. Cat People was directed by Jacques Tourneur, who would go on to direct I Walked with a Zombie and The Leopard Man for Lewton. Tourneur was already a well-respected director before his work with Lewton, and he would go on to work for several years after Cat People. In the book Jacques Tourneur, The Cinema of Nightfall introduction, Martin Scorsese writes, "In the famous sequence in Cat People, where Jane Randolph walks alone in the bus stop in Central Park, the evenness of the tone keys the viewer to the subtle changes in sound and light to such an extent that the climax of the scene, hair-raising every time you see it, is the sound of a bus hitting its air brakes." And this would later go on to be known as a Lewton bus, and this is a jump scare in which what you think something is, it doesn't turn out to be that. So you hear the sound of a cat hissing, and it turns out to be something else entirely, in this case the bus brakes. They made the movie for $140,000, and the film went on to make $4 million and was a top earner for the studio. Cat People was written by DeWitt Borden, and after him and Lewton were given the title by an executive, they went on to research various horror films and cat-related literature in order to develop the script. And I know that Tourneur himself was also a big part of working on the script, so this was a collaborative effort between all 3 of them, and it's important that I know that it's important that we also mention DeWitt's name in the process of creating this film, because you have Lewton's names mentioned the most in conjunction with this film, and I think it's important that all 3 of these names are mentioned when we discuss Cat People. Cat People follows Irena, a sketch artist and immigrant who meets a man named Oliver. As the two grow closer, Irena refuses intimacy, not giving in to so much as a kiss. She fears that due to a family curse caused by the nefarious actions of her ancestors, the moment she becomes aroused, she will turn into a Black Panther. The film received mixed reviews upon its release and has since become a revered classic among horror fans and fans of other genres. Bosley Crowther of the New York Times described the film as a labored and obvious attempt to induce shock. And at this time, it's also important to note that horror films were always B-movies, even the ones that are classics. I mean, Cat People is considered a classic now, and even the ones that we think are the big classics, they were not respected in any sense either, any more than the big films that are made today, and we're expecting them to be seen as these big classics because we expected Hereditary to be respected by the Academy and by these big wigs, and they're not. So Cat People wasn't either, and people kind of seen Cat People as a meaning to shock people, and in a sense, horror is meant to induce something, and for some people that is all that it's meant to do, but for me, Cat People is meant to, at least by the people involved, is meant to do something more than that. I think it's meant to, well, my personal feelings is that it's meant to make you think. And I think a lot. I'm a thinker. I have an analytical mind and a very, very big imagination. And with Cat People, I really look into it. I'm looking into it here. And I just really think that with Cat People, there's a lot more beneath the surface. And this Crowther fellow isn't looking into it. A lot of reviews of the time seem to take this film as grim and unrelenting, as noted by a reviewer at the box office. The reception of the reception of the acting of Simone Simon has also been mixed, with Seagal critiqued her acting, saying that her range was too narrow for the film's more dramatic moments, a problem heightened by her difficulties with American pronunciation. Accent. I like people to sound human and real. And Simone Simon sounds like a person, and she sounds like an immigrant coming to the United States, and that was perfect for her character, and I think it added something to her character, and I just think that's a very unfair criticism and a ridiculous criticism, and it makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. We're gonna go through this film beat by beat and talk about what it means, if it means anything at all. This could just mean me and some other people looking into it a little bit too much, but that's what some of us love to do. We love to really beat a bush. Beat the bush. I don't know, I was looking for an expression there, I didn't find it. Whew! Shansha. So, Irena Dombrovna, played by Simone Simon, is she's at the zoo. I always get it mixed up when she's at the zoo and at Central Park, but she's at the zoo and she's sketching in her big sketchbook, and when she's at the zoo, she's always by the Black Panther that's alone in their cage, and he's a very pissed off Black Panther because he's alone in a cage, and this is meant to mean something because Irena's alone and she's in a cage of her own, and so she gets frustrated and she rips out the page and she throws it, and I don't think she throws it and misses. I think she just throws it and litters, and no littering. And Oliver, this man named Oliver, sees it, and he sees her, and he immediately becomes drawn to her and charmed by her, and he walks up to her and strikes up a conversation, and she's kind of smitten by him, and she mainly just wants a friend. I think that's what she really wants, and of course he wants something more, and he was actually with someone, and I have to be honest, I didn't even, like, the amount of times that I've seen this, I've never even realized that he's been with somebody this whole time, and apparently he has been with somebody, so I didn't know this, but in doing like reading recaps of things and reading other people's reviews and stuff, that's how I even found out that little bit of information. So he ends up leaving this person who we then believe is Alice, who we'll meet later, walks off, and then they go to her apartment to have coffee, which I feel like is a bit risque for the 40s, going to her apartment. They just met. We wouldn't so much just hold hands. So they go to her apartment to have, oh, tea. I misspoke. They have tea. Here's the tea. So he notices that she has a King John, a statue of King John, this douchebag that has a sword, and he has a cat, like a panther, on the sword, and he's kind of freaked out by it. And so she tells him the tale of King John and her ancestors, and kind of what he refers to as a fairy tale. And apparently her ancestors were these Christians who were drawn to witchcraft, and they ended up worshipping the devil, and then he conquered them, and the most wicked ended up escaping to the mountains, and that's who she's descended from. And so she is now cursed. And she later tells him, and she doesn't tell him this part until later, but this is where her belief comes in, that she will turn into a panther. And he basically just tells her that this is nonsense, and he doesn't think that any of this is true. And so they end up parting ways, and he's obviously just very smitten with her. He thinks she's gorgeous and beautiful, which she is. It's Simone Simon. She's absolutely stunning. And he goes and he buys her this cute little kitten, and he ends up taking it to her, and the kitten freaks out, and so she can't take the kitten, so they take it back. And when they go to the place where to get the kitten, or to give the kitten back, or to trade in the kitten, she goes in, and all of the animals are freaking out, because animals, of course, know when something is wrong. Listen to animals. If I've learned anything from horror movies, you listen to animals. And so they go in, and she stays out, but he goes in, gets a bird, and she's like on the outside being like, I want that, yeah, I want that one. So they take it, and she gets the bird, and they, are dating, and, he ends up telling her that they don't have a kiss, and they haven't kissed, and so they get married, because that's a smart thing to do. And the reason that they get married is because when they don't kiss, she tells him about her fear of the change, and what happens when the woman you love fears that she's going to turn into a panther when she becomes aroused. You marry her. So they are then in a Serbian restaurant that Oliver's friend Alice found, and this is a really good scene that a lot of people point out to, that is kind of like it's being spotted as another gay person or another queer person inside a restaurant or any other place. You're the only person in there, and this can be said for anything. If you're the only woman in a place of a male, the only black person inside a place with tons of white people, and someone spots you and sees you, but in this case it is obviously a little bit different because it's kind of like the sense of being outed. But she's sitting there and everyone's just kind of having a good time, and you can kind of see how Irena is feeling a bit uncomfortable because she really doesn't know any of these people. These people are all Oliver's friends, and then this girl spots her, and these other guys mention, oh, she looks like a cat, and she comes over and she says, my sister. Yeah, my sister. And she says my sister in Serbian. And Irena is visibly shaken. She doesn't feel very right about this. And things only get increasingly worse from there because they do not consummate their marriage. He becomes lonely and unhappy. She's lonely and unhappy. And I mean, I understand why Oliver's feeling the way he does, but I mean, spoiler alert for him, he knew what was going to happen because she told him what she was feeling, and he should have known that if he wanted to marry her, that maybe there should have been help before the marriage. Oliver persuades her to see a psychiatrist, Dr. Lewis Judd, played by Tom Conway, and the doctor convinces her that her fears are due to childhood trauma that she has experienced. And when Irena returns from her first session with the doctor, she finds Oliver and Alice together, and she finds that Alice is the one that actually knew the doctor, and that she kind of knows what's going on. I don't know how much she knew about it, but Irena is not particularly happy about this, which is understandable. I think this is kind of where a bit of jealousy starts here, and this is where you kind of get that inkling of DeWitt's, the writer's feeling of why couldn't I just been a woman, or, you know, it's easier for a woman to just be with a man than it is for me, a man, to be with a man, or stuff of that, like, kind of putting his feelings into what he has to deal with into the character of Irena. And this is kind of a big inkling of that happening here. Over time, Oliver becomes increasingly unhappy, and when Oliver goes to work, Alice sees this and she becomes sad at seeing this, and she ends up confessing her love to Oliver. And I forgot that this happened, and so when I had saw this the last time, I was kind of upset about this because their chemistry is more of like a Hey Girl Friday chemistry. They have a more friendship chemistry than they do anything else, and so it just kind of ruined that bit for me. After witnessing Oliver and Alice have dinner together, Irena then decides to follow Alice home, and now Irena is becoming increasingly jealous of them and the relationship that they have together. Alice also recognizes that someone or something is in fact following her, and she does hear snarling noises and other animal noises while this is happening, and this is one of the best moments in the film. It is incredibly suspenseful and thrilling, and we also don't see anything happen, so we just go from seeing Irena following her and then seeing Alice the entire time and hearing these different noises that Alice hears. After the incident, a groundskeeper discovers several freshly killed sheep. The paw prints turn to imprints of a woman's shoes. Irena returns to her apartment. She looks disheveled. Irena gets into the bathtub where she weeps. Irena dreams that Dr. Judd is dressed up as the king, John. Speaking of the key, she later steals the key to the panther's cage in Central Park. Irena and Oliver visit a museum together, and she's upset when they basically ignore her, which is, I mean, why are you even there? Like, why? I think if Alice and Oliver should just not be talking right now, or at least not be together right now until things are dealt with properly. I think that would be the respectful thing to do. But later that same evening, Alice uses the swimming pool in the basement of her apartment building. While swimming, she is stalked by an unseen animal. Oh, this is actually one of the best scenes and one of the most, I don't want to say used, what is the word? David Robert Mitchell, who famously, he utilized this scene in It Follows, and a lot of other people have used this scene quite a bit, or utilized this scene quite a bit in the swimming pool. After Alice screams, Irena flips on the lights and tells her that she is looking for Oliver. Afterward, Alice finds her bathrobe torn to shreds. After appointment with Doctor Needs to Keep It in His Pants, Dr. Judd, Irena informs Oliver that she is no longer afraid, but he tells her that it is too late. He has fallen in love with Alice. People fell in love, like, so easily back then, or they at least fall in love so easily in the movies, for God's sake, and that he intends to divorce Irena. Later at work, Alice and Oliver are cornered by a snarling animal at work. The pair escape and smell Irena's perfume before they do. Alice, so at this point, she can just turn at will, I'm assuming. So there's more than just when she's passionate, or when she's in the throes of passion, or she's aroused. It's also when she's angry and or she can just turn. Alice calls Dr. Judd to warn him, but hangs up as Irena arrives for her appointment. He kisses her because he does not care about traumatizing Irena further. So she kills him. Good for her. Alice and Oliver arrive at Dr. Judd's office as Irena slips away. Irena arrives at the zoo with the stolen key. She opens the panther's cage and is struck down by the panther. The panther is then accidentally struck down by a passing car. Next to the cage, Oliver and Alice find a dead panther on the ground. Oliver says, "She never lied to us." She wrote in her October 1st, 2019 article on Aristotle, "They're both tragic explorations of shame and queer desire," referencing both Cat People and DeWitt and Luton's second collaboration, The Seventh Victim. Gregory also wrote, "Irena is both an expression of female desire and representation of Bowden's male gayness. He too was denied the simplicity that occurs when straight women fell for the men he loved." Irena is an example of women who did not fit into the role of the would-be housewife. She doesn't speak perfect English, nor is she from America. She speaks fondly of her homeland. She's open to her roots. She loves her food from her homeland. She doesn't try to fit into a very specific role, and I think that she's also a great working woman. And I think something that we found very interesting too, though, is that Alice too is not typical of the woman that's an adversary for that, because she's not a housewife either, and I don't think she really expresses, even though she expresses love for Oliver, she doesn't express a want or need to be a housewife, though she does express a want to make him happy. So maybe that's kind of a stand-in for that, but I do find that aspect very interesting. So when you come out to it, Hollywood reacted to the outcry of others around the country when they created the precursor to the Hays Code, and, you know, one of the big things for the Hays Code is that the villain can't win. And in this movie, Irena is the villain. To me, Oliver's a villain, and the doctor. So the doctor can easily be killed in this movie because he did do something horrible, and he could easily be killed. Other people can be killed in these movies. That's totally okay. That's totally fine for that to happen. But Irena had to die. She had to, at least something bad had to happen to her, and that sucks. So if this was made in the context of this 1960 or to now, Irena didn't have to die. So as much as I don't want this to be remade, and I didn't like the 1982 version, I do wish that I do wish that she could have survived. Damn Hays Code. In her article for Horror Homeroom, Elizabeth Irwin writes, Irena is marginalized due to her status as an immigrant. Not only does she speak with an accent and enjoy foreign foods, but she also embraces the stories of her homeland, which strike the other characters as silly at best and psychotic at worst. And even to this day, you'll see where for people, it's odd if you, as a person from another country, especially if you come from a country that's not one of the big ones we know, or not one that doesn't speak English, then why would you want to not be Americanized? And that's something that's still very apparent today. It holds up. In many ways, this movie holds up in the worst ways possible. Irena and Oliver marry. The marriage is not consummated, and Oliver quickly loses patience, turning to a doctor for help. Going to a doctor when you struggle with intimacy, there is no problem with that, but the subtext in the reality that the concern Oliver feels is more about himself than about her is apparent. So, I completely understand where Oliver is coming from and a lot of what his needs are, but there's just certain aspects of things that Oliver does and where he's coming from that is just awful, and especially when you think of a lot of views that many women and queer people express is the saviorism that occurs in cat people, and there's the part of Irena's allure is the fact that she is an immigrant and she knows no one, and there's this thing that Oliver wants. He wants to save her, and I think that's part of what draws Oliver to her, is that she needs to be saved, that she needs him, and Alice does not meet that, because Alice is a beautiful woman. She's strong and she's there and she's available, but she does not need him, and he does not go for her until she's like, oh hey, I'm here. And so queer coding can be presented in a lot of ways, and one of the big examples is in the film The Maltese Falcon, where there's the character played by Peter Lorre, and it's presented, we know that he wears gardenia as a scent, which is obviously something that women wear more of than men do, and so you'll have things where they'll tell you that this character is supposed to be gay, but sometimes in the context of the character of Irena, she represents the struggles that a queer person may have. Not being able to be with the people that they love, not being able to be with them openly, not being able to share their affections, the fear of being caught, the fear of being put away if you were to share that. And in Irena's case, it is all of those things. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it and would like to see more from me, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to be notified for other videos on the channel. If you have any thoughts about cat people or anything else you'd like to see, or anything else regarding queer coding in Hollywood, please comment below. And you can also email me at thepriceofhorror@gmail.com for thoughts, recommendations, and things you would like to see on the channel. Thank you again, my loves, and have a wonderful day.